everybody, this is Dave from Growing the Home Garden. I've got a whole lot to do today. Today is the day I'm going to finally get my tomatoes started and put in the ground. We're going to get some peppers in the garden as well, and we're just going to do some general cleanup. I've gotten some weeds. The last couple weeks have been rainy, and so they keep popping up like crazy. Of course, you know what weeds are like. So that's kind of what I'm going to get involved with today. I'll take you along for some of the process and see how things go. So here is the stretch where I'm going to be starting with and putting in tomato plants. I can just kind of walk you along the bed area here. Pretty decent soil for it. It could be improved some. I'll probably have to come back with some nice mulch, but then we get into this little weed patch area. And this is a little tricky because there's garlic in this patch, which goes well with tomatoes. It's a good companion plant for it, but we're not ready to harvest it yet. So that's kind of poor planning on my part. Actually, it's no planting because I planted those 2 years ago and they're the little sprouts that are left over from it. And then I'm going to have tomatoes going all the way back over there through that area. I'm going to leave the mustard alone for right now because it can ward off other insects and attract good pollinators. So I'm going to keep those in place. But there's a few little weeds in and around everything I need to get out of here. I've got some cilantro I'm letting go to seed too. And so I'm going to plant the tomatoes kind of in and around these plants a little bit. It'll be a little bit haphazard, but I don't want to take these things out right now. So over here, we got some weeds growing in the bottom of the bed there, little stuff, which I'll take a scuffle hoe to, and we'll take care of it. And then over here, these are the tomatoes I planted the other day, and they are doing great. They have increased in size a little bit, and probably in a few days I'll prune off. Actually, I'm going to do this one right now, but I'm going to prune off a lower branch. And the reason I do that is because I want the first 12 inches to 16 inches, let me move my hand there so you can see that, to be without any branches at all. And the reason for that is if there is any kind of soil disease in this bed and it's bouncing up from the rainfall or irrigation, like if I'm watering, those germs and those bacteria and all that kind of stuff can go back up onto the plant. And if I strip those lower leaves, it reduces some of that leaf damage and some of those diseases that could potentially get on the plant. So that's just one thing you can do to keep your plants healthier for the long term. And I'll come over here, I'm going to do that again on this one. And I'm just going to pinch off those lower branches as they grow. I'm going to leave the top growth and a couple leaves so they can continue to gather sunlight and make more leaves later on. And I'm just going to kind of let it grow as it wants to, except for those first 16 inches. And we'll talk about pruning and stuff later on as they grow larger. Over here I wanted to show you the grass mulch. This is about 2 weeks of grass clippings. It's all completely brown. I haven't planted anything in it yet, but what I'm going to show you is what's underneath, and that's the cool thing. Look at all that moisture down there. So, see, it's still breaking down. And then if I can get all the way to the soil, here's a look at the soil underneath. You see how wet that is. It really keeps that moisture down. Very good. So it makes it easy to pull up some weeds, like that root there. That's a Johnson grass weed. And it's still got some time to break down on this. But what I'll do is I'll take the dried clippings and I'll use them as a mulch around my tomato plants after I plant them later today. And then I'll let the green mulch here continue to break down in place so I can use it later. This is one of my favorite tools right here. This is a scuffle hoe. And of course I'm doing this one-handed, so that's a little tricky, but you can see it does a pretty good job. You just kind of run it across the surface of the ground and it cuts off the tops of the weeds, separates them from the crown of the plant, and they eventually die. Sometimes they come back, especially with really aggressive weeds, grasses and things that have long roots. But it does a very good job, especially when they're brand new. This is a must-have tool in my garden. I use it in every bed all the time. It just scuffles the top of the surface. It's also called a stirrup hoe because the end of it looks like a stirrup. So definitely recommend you getting one of those for any of your garden needs. So I just got done digging a bunch of holes. I think there's probably about 16 holes I just dug. And the soil is of varying quality. You'll see there's some clay down in the bottom and better topsoil, garden soil up toward the top. And it's kind of consistent through this spot here, although the soil does get a little better kind of toward the middle where I've amended more. But as I go down the row, you're going to see more and more clay in the holes that I dug. Now clay's got a lot of nutrients in it. The key is getting it out of there, which you need to have organic matter mixed in to help release that better. And over time that improves. This is probably the worst clay soil right here of all those holes that I dug. And to contrast that, it's going to be really interesting to see how the tomato plant does in that spot versus the one in this spot, which is right next to where I used to have an old compost bin. So of course this soil is probably the best soil in the whole garden. And what is interesting to note here is I used to compost eggshells, but you notice that they're still here. They have not broken down, and some of these eggshells have probably been here for years. So I don't think eggshells are that great to put in the compost bin. I mean, you can do it if you want to, but all it's going to do is create a little extra drainage, which may be a good thing for you. So maybe some air pockets, but the calcium you get from them is going to be so slow to release over time that it's really not an appreciable benefit to putting eggshells in your compost. But what I'm curious about is how the tomato plant in this hole is going to do compared to the tomato plant in the clay hole back behind me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant the exact same variety in this hole and in that hole, and we'll do a little comparison and just see how they go throughout the summer. So I'm partway down here with tomato planting, and here's the whittle orange that was in the compost area, and then over there is the whittle orange that's in the clay area. I planted one more whittle orange over across the way, I'll show you in a second, in kind of a more neutral area. We'll see how that goes. This one is a pink jazz, and those were all hardened off, but in the case where maybe you haven't hardened something off so it can go out yet, providing it a little bit of shade will help. This is a Paul Robeson that needed some help to cover the heat of the day here. So I've just put a big pot next to it and given it some shade. So did the same thing over here with this other Paul Robeson. I'm going to readjust that. It's getting a little more light than I want. And I planted it next to this hibiscus from a cutting that I did. And I watered that so that any additional water is going to go on the tomato plant. I only need to keep it there a couple days till it acclimates. It'll get some morning sun, and the pot is located on the south side, so it'll shield it from the heat of the day. So in about 2 or 3 days, I can probably take this away. But until then, keep an eye on it. I did come back with a mulch. This is just grass clippings, as I mentioned before. So they're all getting the same kind of mulch right now, and I'm going to have to mow later, and I'll try to accumulate a little bit more grass clippings before the summer grasses start to take over. Not good to have Bermuda grass growing in your vegetable garden. But I planted pretty much 2 of everything except the whittle orange, which I love, so we planted 3 of them, and of course 2 of them are doing that comparison experiment with the clay versus the compost. So we'll see how that goes. I think we all probably have an idea of what's going to happen with that. And I've got several more holes to go, so this is just kind of a midpoint today. An alternative to hardening off the seedlings or putting a pot next to them is you can use a row cover, and this will help filter the light so it's not as intense going onto those new tomato plants. I've got 2 in here. They are actually a hybrid, which I haven't done hybrids in a very long time. These are just big boy hybrids, and I found a package of seeds from 2008, and I think I threw every seed in the little cup, and 2 of them grew. So I've got 2 of these big boy tomatoes that are going to be growing in our garden this year. Hybrid tomatoes are just fine. A lot of times they're very good. The thing is, with hybrid tomatoes, it's harder to save seed from them because they will not necessarily be the exact same tomato when you grow them the following year. But you can put them in your garden with your heirloom tomatoes. And the funny thing, tomatoes are perfect flowers, or the flowers that they have are perfect flowers, which means they have all the parts necessary for them to self-pollinate. And so your heirloom tomatoes are going to be very good at self-pollinating, so you probably will end up with the same thing, or at least reasonably close to it each year. Heirloom tomatoes are essentially just a stabilized hybrid that over the years has become very, very stable and consistent with growing. So at this point I've got 20 tomato plants planted, and here's one. This is a whittle orange. And we're using a heavy wire gauge cage that is just kind of wrapped around and hooked here in the center for most of our tomato cages. And I've done this for years. I've got 10 of these. The others I'm going to use the bamboo to put up some trellising. But this works really great because it keeps it all contained, and you can reach in there to harvest if you need to. Oh, there you go. You can actually see my hand in there. And it grows all up. It supports it all the way across, and we just hold it up with a U-post over here. And those are cheap and easy to get a hold of. And you can get a big roll of the wire for probably $50 to $75 and do quite a few cages with it. So that's what we use there. As far as tomatoes go, I've got 3 little orange plants, 2 Cherokee purple, 2 Paul Robeson planted, 2 chocolate cherry tomatoes. I've got a yellow pear. I've got 3 Amish paste tomatoes in, a yellow gooseberry, a Sun Gold Select. Actually, you know what? I forgot to plant that one. I meant to plant it and I haven't yet. Looks like I've got to do one more. And then we've got the newest one, the one I'm trying this year, is the pink jazz tomato. So I hope that's all of them. I may have forgotten one. But I'm going to see if I can squeeze in that yellow pear, or not yellow pear, the Sun Gold Select, because that's just a very delicious orange cherry style tomato. Well guys, I think that's about it for me on this particular video. I've been out for several hours now getting the tomatoes in. I'm glad I got 20 tomatoes planted. I actually put in some more potatoes too. They are a purple potato, which are pretty cool looking. So I got a lot done, a lot of weeding done and things like that. So I mean, it's just kind of a standard work day in the garden sort of thing, but you know, it's always exciting when you're getting to put in those first tomatoes. I still got to do my peppers. I've got a lot of peppers I want to put in, some jalapenos, some bell peppers, and some that are just kind of hybridized. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to end up looking like, but they should be pretty good. So I just have a lot to do here. Got squash to do, beans to do, and so look forward to more videos with that kind of stuff coming soon. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you learned a few things here at Growing the Home Garden. And if you don't mind, hit like, hit the subscribe button, and that way you don't miss anything as I go forward with the rest of the year in the garden, and just kind of see what we do here. So thanks for watching, and have a good time playing in the dirt. So if you stuck around and you're still here on this video, I actually went ahead and I put in some peppers. So this is bonus coverage here. And what we've got over there are the mini stuffing peppers. There's 1, 2, 3 of those. There is a Tabasco pepper. We'll use that for a dried spice blend at the end of the year. There's a brown jalapeno. I have 2 of those in. There is a jalapeno from 2013, that seed that I saved that year, a serrano pepper, and 3 orange bell peppers. We like the bell peppers. Now when I planted them, the cool thing about peppers is they're just like tomatoes. You can plant them deep, they'll grow roots all along the stem. I'll show you a quick example of that. See right there, those are some I could transplant in, and they're growing all these little nubs of roots. They can do that pretty much anywhere along the stem. So you can develop a much stronger root system as you grow your peppers. Now after I planted them, I put a little bit of blood meal around each of them because blood meal is a good nitrogen thing, and I do want to put out some good leaf growth to start off with on these pepper plants. And I'll pinch off flowers and things, the first sets, and then let it produce after those. So just a couple quick tips on growing peppers. And again, thanks for watching. Please subscribe.